Rebuild Ohio has worked hard to gather a coalition together from around the state and demonstrate that this really is an issue that's not just focused on Cleveland, Columbus, or Cincinnati, but really it's much broader than that, and it transcends the private sector, nonprofit, and public sectors. I want to recognize the Rebuild Ohio Steering Committee, those who are here today, and those who are not, the organizations that are represented here. Patricia Barnes from the Ohio CDC Association. Harry Blanton, I don't think is here, but he is on our steering committee, represents Hamilton County Economic Development Office. Michael Survey from the City of Cincinnati, Department of Community Development and Planning. David Eflin, City of Delaware, Department of Community Development and Planning. Frank Ford, Neighborhood Progress Inc. in Cleveland. Chris Gilbert, Springfield Township in the Cincinnati area. Hugh Grief from Toledo, the Local Initiative Support Coalition. Doug Harsney, Ohio Department of Development. Donna Hunter is here today from the City of Columbus. Gene Krebs, my colleague at Greater Ohio. Kermit Lynn from Cleveland State. George Maddie at Columbus Housing Partnership. And Margaret Murphy from WIC Neighbors in Youngstown. So we really, I mention that because we want to continue to stress this really is a statewide problem with statewide solutions and the need for statewide solutions. Before I go through the policy recommendations, I also want to recognize the fact that we see a lot of progress already being made on the state level. We applaud the Ohio Department of Development, and I see John McGill here today for their efforts they're undertaking right now on a new strategic plan for economic development for the state, and we are working closely with them on a lot of these issues. In addition, you heard about the legislation that's been proposed on a nonpartisan basis. We know that local leaders are doing their best to address this issue. As Bobby mentioned, there's a lot of evidence of innovative practices that are being undertaken on the local level. Lima's Dangerous Structures Ordinance and their land bank, Zanesville working with their municipal court to strengthen their property maintenance codes, Columbus's Home Again program, Dayton's citywide inventory. So there is a lot of local innovation going on. But we know that local leaders can't go it alone. They need state support with new policies and an examination of old policies that may be counterproductive and may be perpetuating sprawl and new development that is emptying our cities and preventing a return on our investment that we've already made in our core communities. So we call for the Ohio Legislature administration to adopt a more comprehensive policy approach to Ohio's neighborhood and housing crisis. As you can see, if you could just move that ahead, we advocate a mix of remedies over the course of the next 18 months to slow the vacant and abandoned property pipeline, expedite the reclamation process, and place properties in the hands of responsible owners. These policies would start, we would hope, with improving the foreclosure prevention mechanisms and mitigating damage from foreclosures that are ongoing. We want to prevent new foreclosures in the case of occupied property, and in the case of abandoned, mitigate foreclosure damage, and continue to expedite foreclosure processes where it's appropriate to place properties in the hands of responsible owners. Other examples are enabling courts to better manage the current and future landside of foreclosure cases through changed judicial procedure and case management reforms and streamlining of tax foreclosure procedures. We want to authorize sheriffs to record deeds with the county recorder that would hold buyers accountable for homes in disrepair, and require plaintiffs and lenders to file a property condition report at the initiation of foreclosure. We also want to help local leaders with strengthen code enforcement tools, making it more difficult for absentee owner investors to hold properties, quote, hostage in abandoned disrepair. Local governments are on the front line of defense in fighting this vacancy problem. We would want to see a statute modified to allow courts to undertake judicial sales that ensure clear title. Within a year, we would hope to see development and implementation of better property inventory systems. Bobby alluded to the fact that they vary widely from place to place, and understanding the scope of the problem is really a first step in defining and tailoring solutions to a specific community. There are a lot of different ways to do this, and we'd be the first to acknowledge we don't have all the answers on that, but we'd like to see some incentives and systems created for local property data collection, and also have that integrated into a statewide system, ideally. We'd like to encourage uniform or compatible reporting systems, and again, provide that for an integrated system. We want to encourage the creation of new tools for vacant and abandoned property redevelopment. This would include programs or mechanisms that enable local governments to acquire properties, such as a county land bank. We have a land bank statute here in Ohio, but we encourage expanding those powers to create county land banks that could accept, hold, and manage vacant foreclosed homes, include providing tools to receive donated and tax-delinquent property that they could hold for future use. Excuse me. We'd like to see legislation authorizing municipalities to abate nuisance by initiating foreclosure action on abandoned property. This would be House Bill 277 that Senator Stivers has proposed and is supported, was initially supported by Columbus City Attorney Rick Pfeiffer. And in the longer term, within the next 18 months, we want to see local reuse and planning areas for longer term sustainability. Some of these proposals were alluded to in the Governor's Foreclosure Prevention Task Force, which is a great step forward, and we want to see some of those proposals carried out, such as providing incentive grants to communities over 2 years to create comprehensive, locally driven planning strategies. This would lead to broader neighborhood revitalization, so we're not just doing property redevelopment on a case-by-case, property-by-property basis. We need to look at the bigger picture because our communities have been so devastated. Even reviewing existing funding programs in different departments, such as transportation and development, to determine how they can be better utilized to redevelop vacant properties. We certainly are very aware of the budget crisis in this state and are not looking for new funding, but we want to realign some old funding and retarget that to this problem overall, and evaluate rehabilitation and demolition strategies in this realignment of funding, so that we can look at where that would be appropriate as well. In addition to the policy reforms outlined, we anticipate that Ohio Housing Finance Agency could play a role with their increasing leadership and vision in this area to addressing some of the longer-term comprehensive strategies that we need in this state. I would like to also point, if you could go back one slide, to those who, all the groups and organizations that helped fund this study. We were really pleased to get the support of a wide variety in the private sector and nonprofit sector, including Fifth Third Bank, Huntington National Bank, who's represented here today, JP Morgan Chase, Key Bank, National City Bank Foundation, as well as our nonprofit partners, enterprise community partners, NeighborWorks, Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing, Ohio Housing Finance Agency, Ohio Realtors Association, and then Turner Foundation, who's represented here today, and I should mention the Sky Foundation, they've been now absorbed into Huntington, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. So again, this points to a coalition that we feel is building, and we look to all of our partners. We look forward to working together. This is really, I want to emphasize that the recommendations we've laid out are not exhaustive, and we look forward to working with the Ohio Department of Development, with our private sector partners, and our nonprofit partners in fleshing this list out and making sure that we can address all together this growing crisis in our state.